So thank you all so much, everyone, for joining us today. Just letting you know that this meeting is being recorded. Before I started, I wanted to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land of people that I'm on, that I live and work on. I'm joining from the lands of the Whadjuk Noongar people, and I pay my respects to elders past and present. Really recognising that sovereignty was never ceded and it always was and always will be Aboriginal land. My name's Roisin and I'm from the Relationships and Sexuality Education Project. Our project supports WA school staff in delivering comprehensive and evidence-based relationships and sexuality education. We're generously supported by the WA Health Growing and Developing Healthy Relationships program and Curtin University, who helped to make this webinar possible today. We run a number of professional development workshops, 4 after-school webinars and a biannual symposium every 2 years, which is coming up in October. About that symposium, I'm just going to put a link in the chat box just while it's on my mind of that symposium that we have coming up. I have no idea why it went up in really large font, but here we go. We also have a YouTube channel where you'll find some recordings of our prior after-school webinars and some examples of RSE implementation. So I encourage you to check some of our past training and videos out there. For the next hour, we're joined by Jane Bennett from the Chalice Foundation. Jane is the founder of the Chalice Foundation and a social worker, researcher, writer and educator with nearly 40 years in practice. Jane has been offering a positive menstrual education model through the Chalice Foundation programs in schools and communities since 2000. This includes an understanding of menstrual shame and fostering shame resilience. The Chalice Foundation aims to foster society-wide transformation of shame and silence, isolation and ignorance with positive menstrual education programs, a new holistic model of menstrual wellbeing and training and support for menstrual educators. Jane launched Celebration Day for Girls in 2000, Cool on the Inside in 2002, Fathers Celebrating Daughters in 2004, and Men's Ed in 2016. Jane co-created the Right Journey Girls Year 9 program and continues her long-standing role with natural fertility management. She is eternally passionate about nourishing healthy curiosity and best practice self-care for women and girls and all who menstruate. So Jane, I will pass on to you to present your webinar.
Thanks, Roisin, and so great to see you all here. I'm really delighted to be joining you from Djadja country in central Victoria today. So I have a PowerPoint, but I will say a little bit more about myself and my delight to be sharing this information with you. From what I understand, I'm speaking to people from schools in Western Australia and also perhaps around the country, whether now or later on. So let me just press a few buttons and we'll see how we go. There. So Roisin, can you let me know when you can see that screen? Hopefully you can shortly. Okay, it's there. Thank you so much. So this is the topic that we're looking at today, the relationship really between positive and comprehensive menstrual education and how that relates to healthy sexual development. My field, I think these fields are very closely related, but my particular expertise is in menstrual education. As Roisin said, I've been in this field for, close on 4 decades. And this really started for me from learning in my mid-20s natural fertility management, which are a particular formulation of fertility awareness methods. So I learned these at that time motivated by the need for contraception and being at that age fed up with what was on offer, the pill and IUDs and so on. I had been pretty happy with a diaphragm, but I really liked the idea of natural fertility management. That said, I hesitated for a couple of years. In retrospect, that was crazy, but I hesitated because I thought I hadn't really been given any understanding that I could know my body well enough to be able to read the signs of fertility to use that for contraception. But when I did go with a new boyfriend who was also really keen, and we were supporting each other in this, and learned about the methods, went home with in those days an audio tape and Roneo sheets and paper charts and information, and started to chart my cycle over the next month, 2 months, 3 months. It was a complete revelation, and I was just so delighted to find how well I could know my cycle and see those patterns. And it was like a veil lifting, and it was really like this. To me, it felt like this fundamental learning about myself, seeing not just my fertility, which became in a way a side benefit to know when I was fertile and when I wasn't, but it became about really understanding myself and what was happening emotionally, psychologically, physically at different stages of the cycle. So I've really been on that wave ever since, and still really keen to pass on this information. At that time, I did start working in natural fertility management shortly after, and then that sort of, I think that in a way, their sister fields, menstrual education, which involves all ages, often younger kids, teenagers, all ages of and all genders, really. So before I move on to the other slides, I just want to share a couple of stories with you. I was speaking to a 13-year-old neighbour of mine recently who has started to have her period, and I was asking her about how it was with her friends, whether they were able to talk to each other about period. And she said, oh yeah, in her friendship group, they're really comfortable, and they'll, share stories with each other and ask questions and that sort of thing. And they're very supportive. She did say that the boys in the class, excuse me, still tease and mock, and in her words, are stupid about it. Now, to me, that's to do with a lack of menstrual education in that regard. And it was great to hear that she does have that support with her friends. Another instance was, I think Rasheen mentioned that I'm an author. I worked on the book About Bloody Time that was came out from the Victorian Women's Trust. And About Bloody Time was a body of research that started in 2014 and went for a number of years. We surveyed almost 3,500 women of different ages who did all happen to identify as women at that time. And so most of that was online, but we did have in Victoria various groups of different ages that we spoke to, and we had sessions with. And of these, 7 were in schools, and we tried to have as varied schools as possible. So there were schools, there were rural schools, there were inner city schools, there were church schools, there were public schools, other kinds of private schools. And we found of the 7, girls at 6 of those schools was in these beautifully held by experienced facilitators in a very sort of comfortable and private space. They were still uncomfortable talking openly about periods and their experiences. They did do paper surveys as well, so that's where we got more information from them. And what they did say in those paper surveys, that there was, they didn't feel comfortable talking about periods, that, whether, even in the toilets, if someone else became aware that they had their period, that information could be used against them. Which I have to say was particularly sad to hear about. There was one school that had quite a different story to tell, and at that school there had for quite a few years been a program in earlier classes, the Celebration Day for Girls program that we run, and the And because that had been going on for a number of years, it seems to have influenced the culture, so that these Year 9 girls said they were very comfortable talking openly about periods, and if boys were in the classroom, that was fine. The boys were cool about periods, and they were very supportive of each other. So they seemed to have more confidence, more openness, and actually more knowledge about their cycles as well. So I want to talk about some of the features of menstrual education, and we have a program we launched early last year called Foundations of Menstrual Education that has 10 modules. We go into a lot of detail about things. So what I'm giving you here is just a small taste, but these are important points, and they're important points that I think really connect with the healthy sexual development theme that we're particularly looking at today. So, what are the features of comprehensive menstrual education? And these might seem really obvious, but accurate, age-appropriate menstrual cycle biology and awareness. Now, that's a great idea. Good. There's a lot of different ways of teaching menstrual cycle biology or physiology, if you like. And there, of course, on one extreme, there's the, black and white cutout picture and somebody in a white coat and a pointer. I'm characterizing that a little bit, but it's, it can be done in a very dry way. A very disembodied way, in a sense, or it can be done equally accurately, I have to say, but with much more warmth and interest and curiosity. And we'll talk about this a bit later, in terms of tips and how to go about this. But I think the key there is when you're looking at, if you're going to be teaching to whatever age group, and of course it might be simpler for younger people. But if you're going to be teaching about these parts of the body, consider, what is amazing about the ovary, what the ovary does, what is extraordinary about the cervix and the vagina and the vulva and so on, and really share that. And if you don't feel that or know that yet, there's lots of fantastic information. Again, going back to the book About Bloody Time, we have a whole big section there on the biology, but particularly through that lens of how extraordinary it is. So if you haven't seen it, I'm sure it's in many libraries near you, so check that out. So the second bullet point is understanding and addressing the menstrual taboo. Now, depending on who your audience is, depending on who your group is that you're working with, you may or may not be talking about the taboo in obvious terms, but it's really important that you have been able to reflect on it and have some understanding about how the taboo functions. It's my understanding over many years of observing that society-wide we have a very unconscious menstrual taboo or shame, we could call it. We may not, I may not, or you may not relate to personally feeling menstrual shame, but we do as a society tend to default to silence and default to, oh, well, we're too busy to go there, or it's been handled this way for a long time and it seems to be working. Let's not speak about it. And you might see this if you're bringing it up in team meetings at work or with other people or other community organisations in your life, or you may not. It's quite a lumpy phenomena. It's not the same everywhere. But I think it's really useful to understand it, because if you're going to be offering menstrual education in any form, you will bump into it. And it's nice the more personal reflection you've done, the more aware you are of it, the less you're likely to be reactive and able to sort of, in a way, hold the space and have compassion for that tendency. I strongly recommend, if I'm sure you've heard the name Brené Brown. She did some fantastic work on shame, not specifically menstrual shame, but her book, I thought it was just me, but it isn't, is really unpacks shame to a great degree. And I think it's a really good framework for us to understand menstrual shame as well. One of the things she says about shame is that it thrives on secrecy, silence, and judgment. And I think that is perhaps how menstrual shame has survived as long as it has. And the other thing, on a more positive note, that she says, shame cannot survive empathy. It cannot survive being spoken. So I think it's a terrific book of hers if you get to that at some point. So the next point there is straightforward, respectful communication and conversations. And this may seem also really obvious, and we would perhaps aim in every respect to have straightforward, respectful communication and conversations. But there's more to it than is apparent. In relation to having conversations or lessons on menstrual education or even team meetings, we need to be aware that there are some deep sensitivities and deep concerns that people may have. So by respectful communication, we need to create a really comfortable, sufficiently private space. We need to allow space for conversation, not just whip through some information, unless it is just adding information to a talk, an information session on the next camping trip or something like that. It might be just, you're adding something about pads and tampons to that. But if it's a more broad menstrual education, we need to really think about, what's going to make that comfortable and most effective for people. In the next bullet point, I've listed perhaps the three key or core or, the elements that you'd most want to make sure you cover. And of course, there's many more, but let's have a look at these. So menstrual materials, menstrual products, what can be used? So, for all of us who have had a menstrual cycle for maybe many years, we tend to find what we like and what's comfortable for us and stick with it. And the same happens for parents of your students, mothers of your students. So students may not come across all the different options that are available to them. And I think it's really great to allow time to really look at different products, some of them disposable, some of them not disposable, even if some of them wouldn't be suitable for, say, younger students, just to understand what they are. So it's not just whispered, perhaps with, incorrect information, but it's actually really, really clear, useful information. And I think now in Australia, all states and territories have, to a greater and lesser extent, menstrual products available in schools. I don't know if that's all private schools everywhere. I don't think it is, but certainly public schools. So that can be part of the conversation. But people may, your students or your participants might like to know about other things as well. So it's great to stay up with those, even if they're not all products that you would use. Social and emotional issues around menstruation is really great to be able to bring up. Emotional issues, maybe, and psychological issues, maybe just understanding different feelings, different moods at different stages of the cycle. Not that there's one way for everybody, but just opening that conversation, and which can open the conversation also about self-care. How do we take care of ourselves if different things are more or less difficult at different times in the cycle? And social issues around how we talk to other people, anything that comes up in terms of perhaps being teased or bullied, or how do we talk to mum and dad, our friends. There's always room for those conversations. Just as an example, there's a school in southern Queensland that has had a celebration day for girls also every year sometime. And once they've had that, once a term, one of the female teachers will have, in inverted commas, a tea party with the girls, and they have they'll do that in a sort of a private space, and the conversation can be about anything, but the teacher will always just check in how they're doing with their cycle. Do they have any questions or concerns or things they want to share? And the girls just really love that opportunity. And they also may talk about all sorts of other things about being teenagers, relationship issues and so on. But certainly touching base quite regularly from time to time is they find there's always things to talk about, always things to ask, and often the teacher involved might just bring along some gentle self-help therapy ideas to try out, those sort of things. So number 3 there is understanding what's normal in the cycle in terms of in terms of pain, in terms of quantity of blood, and so on. For many of us, we might be really hard pressed to know what is normal, what is healthy, what is a healthy amount of blood, for instance, and what is not normal, and if a person's experience is not normal, what they can then do. If they do need to go to see a health professional, what information they need to be able to bring. That's can really make a difference to how they are helped, how effectively they can be helped. And the last point here is about adults modelling healthy attitudes and behaviours. So, and this is again perhaps a no-brainer, but and very similar to healthy sexual education, is being able to be knowledgeable and have a sort of a healthy attitude and be able to be present, not trying to get through the material and get out of the room, which of course does happen, and I've seen that over time. So let's have a look now at why menstrual education. Why is this important? And there's actually lots of different bodies of research around. I just picked a few that I thought were interesting, just to give you an illustration of why this is important, because sometimes we think, as I mentioned before, well, look, it's gone okay without people talking about it, and they just seem to manage. Or the question is, or do they? Can we do better? So the first body of research came out of this same survey in Victoria, the Victorian Women's Trust, and we found that of the cohort who were 12 to 18 years old, 7 out of 10, 70%, said that they either disliked everything about periods or that there's good and bad, but mostly bad. Now, when we saw that statistic, when we put all the data together and saw that statistic, I didn't expect it to be as extreme, and that's 7 out of 10. And to me, that's not. Some people may look at that and say, oh, well, that's because periods are awful. And I think that's basically, I think that's a sad way to think about it. I think what that indicates is a lack of suitable education. And I'm not saying that from the point of view everyone has to be Pollyanna-ish about it and love periods. I mean, people are welcome to feel how they feel about it. But I think because we haven't done such a great job of, a positive, wholesome, holistic education about menstruation and the menstrual cycle, I think that is why we can see a statistic like that. The next one down was some research. It's quite old, I have to confess. Let me see if I can tell you when that was. Oh, yes. It was, I'm going to confess, it was 1996, because you'll see further down, I have referenced these. So nearly 30 years ago. However, I think it's important. And the Centre for Adolescent Health, which is connected to the Royal Children's Hospital in Melbourne, did a study on boys and girls and found that the number one risk factor for depression, a development of depression and anxiety for girls, which doubled their risk, was whether that or not they had gone through menarche. So it doubled it from pre-menarcheal girls, which is a really shocking statistic. What was equally shocking is after that came out, there was nothing to say. It's almost like people accepted, oh, well, that's how it is. Rather than, well, why is that, and can we mitigate that? Can we do something better? Just for your interest, at that time, whether this has changed, the risk for depression, the number one factor of risk of depression for boys was the status of their father's career. The higher the status, the higher the risk. So that's an interesting statistic as well. And I also didn't see anything particular coming out about that. So the middle panel was a very interesting study, much more recent. You'll be pleased to know. Let me see if I can work out when this was. Put into my notes here. This was 2002. This was in the US. And it was, the participants in this survey were adults. They didn't know that what was being surveyed was menstrual shame. So they just watched a scene with a live actor, female actor, and doing particular things. And then they were surveyed afterwards as to, on a whole lot of things. So the actor performed a number of identical activities and then accidentally dropped a hair clip or a tampon out of her handbag. And that was just the only difference in the things that, the various activities that happened. The participants also got to sort of meet with the actor in the same space, physical space. And when surveyed later, participants to a high degree expressed a lower evaluation of competence and likability and were less willing to sit next to the actress when she dropped the tampon as compared to when she dropped the hair clip. So for me, that just really illustrates how unconscious this can be, whether those participants would relate to having, having a degree of the menstrual taboo or menstrual shame or menstrual judgment or lack of empathy or not. Who knows? We don't know from the research. But I think that just shows us how unconscious it can be. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I think it can be really lumpy, where shame and the taboo shows up. That may not be at all the case for you in your life. It may seem a lot more open. But, I think it's just an interesting one to see. Where is that showing up? And have you been in places where you've seen that show up? Okay, looking at the next panel, there was a very interesting piece of research that happened. Where did that happen? I haven't made a note of that here, but it is in the research. So these were adolescents were surveyed, but somewhere between 1 and 3 years after they started their first period, and they were surveyed with their suggestions regarding preparing girls for menarche. What would, if there was something that could improve that, or in their estimation, what would those things be? So these how many? There were quite 157 ninth grade girls. And in the wash-up of the whole survey, what they found was the number one thing, and this was by a long shot, is emotional support. So emotional presence, emotional support for all sorts of things. It might even be just getting information, but it might be, oh, I'm worried about this, or is this right, or is this normal? Whatever kind of questions, or just being present with all those feelings and uncertainty was the number one thing they thought would have really helped make that experience better. Second most is practical information. Pads, tampons, other products, where to get them, how to use them, how to get rid of them, so on and so forth. All the information about those, and the physiology was third. Important, but still the third element. So I have found that very instructive, and I think, for all that there can be some great materials out there, there might be flyers or YouTube clips or little films or great books. It is the emotional presence and support and connection with real people that is particularly needed for supporting young people as they're preparing or starting to menstruate. And the final study, and there were quite a few earlier that said something similar, is that, and this was with senior high school students not that long ago, from memory. This was in 2016, of senior high school students in the Australian Capital Territory. Is that showed, a considerable lack of personal knowledge about the menstrual cycle and an astoundingly low rate of seeking help. And of course, those two things go together. If we don't have the language for it, we then, we don't know what's normal, we don't know what's not. We might find it very difficult to talk about our experience or be too embarrassed. So I think those just give a little snapshot of some of the reasons why menstrual education, specifically, as even separate from sex education, relationship education, reproductive biology, why it's really important to have specific education around menstruation and the menstrual cycle. This definition of menstrual health, just to add maybe underline all of that and add a positive note, came out in 2021. It was worked on and formulated by the Terminology Action Group of the Global Menstrual Collective, which was a sort of quite a large group of really diverse experience, certainly quite a proportion of them in universities around the world. And the succinct definition is menstrual health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity in relation to the menstrual cycle. So I personally was thrilled when I saw this, when it came out. I thought it was really comprehensive and, wonderfully put. And often with the focus has been much more on menstrual pathology, on what's wrong with periods and the menstrual cycle, whereas having a clear definition of what menstrual health means is really giving us a picture of something that we can work toward and aim for. And to me, it really shifted the focus considerably. If you later on in this PowerPoint, which you will receive, there are references, and you will be able to go in and see where this came from. And I really strongly recommend you go there, because there is a whole lot more to that. This is just the central definition, and it's broken down into a whole lot of areas. For instance, that girls, women, and all other people who experience a menstrual cycle throughout their life course are able to, one, access accurate, timely, age-appropriate information about the menstrual cycle, etc., as well as related self-care and hygiene practices, that they're able to care for their bodies during menstruation, such that their preferences, hygiene, comfort, privacy and safety are supported, and that's unpacked further, that they're able to access timely diagnosis, treatment and care for menstrual cycle-related discomforts and disorders, including access to appropriate health services, etc., that they're able to experience a positive and respectful environment in relation to the menstrual cycle, free of stigma and psychological distress, including the resources and support they need to confidently care for their bodies and make informed decisions about self-care throughout their menstrual cycle, and decide whether and how to participate in all spheres of life, including civil, cultural, economic, social and political, during all phases of the menstrual cycle, free from menstrual-related exclusion, restriction, discrimination, coercion and/or violence. Now, that later point may not be so obviously a problem in Australia, although it may be in some smaller communities within Australia. I couldn't say. I just want to add to this point that we're starting to get more research and really great information coming out now on how valuable to our health the menstrual cycle is in its own right. Now, of course, it's sublimely connected to conception, and we are all here because of in a whole range of things, but also because of the menstrual cycle, our fertility cycle. But alongside that, there are great health benefits to a lifetime of, or through the years of having a menstrual cycle. There are important recent findings showing the health and longevity benefits for women having years of natural cycles. That means those that include ovulation. This represents a significant departure from a common assumption that menstrual cycles are only useful when conception is desired and expendable when not. Particularly prominent in this new field is the Canadian endocrinologist Professor Geraldine Pryor, who has said, and she's done a lot of research in this area, she has said women benefit from 35 to 40 years of ovulatory cycles, not just for fertility, but also to prevent osteoporosis, stroke, dementia, heart disease, and breast cancer. So these benefits last well beyond the actual years of having a menstrual cycle. And this is through the ovulatory cycles. And of course, by ovulating, we produce progesterone. If we don't ovulate, we don't produce progesterone. So to a certain degree, these are benefits from regular bathing in progesterone. Okay, so let's finish off with a few little ideas about tips, tricks, and activities for you if you're offering menstrual education. And my caveat for this is there are so many different scenarios. Whether you're including this in PE and health classes, whether you're including something about menstrual education in English or English literature or maths for that matter, or just special separate sessions. Whether you're offering sessions for parents at a school or having team conversations, all of these are different settings. So, of course, all of which will require some different focus. So, which brings me to number one. It really all starts and finishes with the educator or facilitator and what their or your intention is. So being very clear about what your intention for a particular session is key, because there are so many different places to go. Of course, it's really important to normalize periods on all levels. And what I mean by that is it's not just one lesson sometime between year 5 and year 7. Periods are part of everyday life. So they really should be part of many conversations, many school or other organisation policies, for instance, team meetings. To really, not so much to share personal information unless you feel comfortable and safe to do that and it's relevant, but more to how do we support those having a cyclical life, and what are the ways we can make that most comfortable. So that's really important. Biology, and I'm coming back to the same points I made before. What is amazing about these different things? And as far as possible, using resources that aren't black and white charts, being something more organic, more part of nature is really fantastic. And you might like to really look at the menstrual cycle alongside other cycles in nature. This can be a really great way to get across that, the day-night cycle, the seasonal cycle, even the breath cycle are really important and integral to who we are, and being able to put the menstrual cycle alongside these, for instance. The social and economic factors, looking at menstrual well-being and respect as integral to achieving gender equity and dignity. So, you can be exploring, what I would call period dignity, or you could often known as period poverty programs. And looking at the different programs. There's many now, and of course great need still, but looking at those different programs, and that can be a great way of bringing awareness and understanding for participants to the importance of this cycle, and how that can be tricky for some people. Just imagine what that means is that as part of the book and the report about Bloody Time, we had an Imagine statement that has since been turned into a poster. And in the resources below, I give you the link to where to be able to download that. That is, it's really setting out what if we'd already achieved this? What if already people would, there was the right amount of support, everyone was educated and comfortable, what would that look like? And it sort of tells a story through a person's life of how that would be. I think it's a great way to have discussions, to bring discussions, even with your adult team, your teacher team, could be great, and certainly in classes too. Similarly, the menstrual health, the health definition can be a great way to have conversations. And you'd all be very familiar with the understanding and the practice of growth mindset. So I will leave that to you. How would you teach menstrual education through a growth mindset lens? That you can have a lot of fun with that. And of course, it's all about conversations, and some of these can be really informal, and sometimes it may be, oh, that's a great question, I don't know, I'm going to find that out for you. And just being a go-to person that is willing to do that can be incredibly valuable for your students. Before I go to that quote, I'm just looking at, I had a few more ideas. Oh, yeah. So, there's the biology of the menstrual cycle, but to take that further, I was talking about my experience with fertility awareness earlier on, and there is, there's a fantastic program that's come out of Western Australia by Felicity Rue, called My Vital Cycles, and I've got the link for that later on. And this is bringing the practice and learning of fertility awareness to classrooms for the really quite profound self-awareness that this brings, and it's a life skill that I would highly recommend. So when I show you the resources, please have a look at that shortly. So I've added this quote. I just saw it a couple of days ago from Kate Clancy. She's an anthropologist, and her book, Period, The Real Story of Menstruation. And she said in there, menstruation is a wild process that should captivate and delight. And while maybe not everyone is always delighted by their periods, for many of us who do look at them with curiosity and an eye of looking at something awesome in nature, it really can be very captivating. So I'm not going to go through all the references. That's, you'll be able to find all the different things, the various studies I was looking at. Second from the bottom is Julie Hennigan, who's at the Burnett Institute in Melbourne, and that was to do with the menstrual health, a definition for policy, practice and research. That's where the menstrual health definition came from. I'm not going to go. You can explore all that yourself. And here's this is my very succinct list that I tried to keep short. I think I'll come back to you and we'll see what questions you have. But I really strongly recommend you have a good look at all of that. And you're very welcome to contact me, actually. If you go to, actually, I'll go back, the Chalice Foundation up here, chalicefoundation.org.au. You can contact me through there. So if you have any questions about anything I've spoken about today, you're very welcome to email me, and we can have an email chat or perhaps get together and have a chat. So please feel free to do that. And here's our current favourite offering is the Foundations of Menstrual Education, which the link to information about that's in the resources. So I'm just going to escape and am I back?
Yep, you're back. Thank you so much, Jane. I think I'm speaking for myself, but I don't know if I'm sure I can speak for others when I can say I can really hear your passion for the area and your knowledge around the area as well. So thank you so much for sharing that with us and all of our attendees today. I do have a question in the chat, and then I've written a couple of questions down as well. But if anyone has any questions, feel free, if you want, to put them in the chat box or turn on your mics and ask Jane that way. I have a question from Halim. Halim has said, thank you for sharing this. It's clear how important positive menstrual education is beyond standard sex ed. One question they keep coming back to is, how can we make menstrual education more inclusive and accessible for trans and gender diverse adolescents, including those who may not yet be aware of their gender identity? And then kind of the double from that is, how can we prevent them from experiencing increased gender dysphoria from menstrual focused education? If you have any kind of feedback or experience on that.
Yes. Look, it's certainly something I and we in my team have been considering for a number of years, and we have had instances of students in several of those categories. And one of the understandings I've come to is that there's no one way. It is really looking at the needs of the student or students that you have in front of you and what will best support them. I think that said, it also can be tricky if somebody is experiencing gender dysphoria. Menstrual education certainly doesn't. It's not about femininity or masculinity. It's a biological process, but sometimes these biological processes can be very uncomfortable or triggering for those who are really experiencing that dysphoria. So I really recognise that as an issue. I think what we have to be careful of is not avoiding menstrual education because of that difficulty. And I think in my experience, depending on the age of the student, speaking with them specifically about whether they'd like to join in a certain group or not, and what their needs might be, is an obvious way to approach it. Beyond that, all I can say is there's not one simple, straightforward answer. I think we just have to be empathetic, communicative, and present with the people in front of us usually brings up the right response.
Amazing, thank you. Yep, Halim has also said thank you. Amazing. I had a question. When I went to check the About Bloody Time and find the link to put in the chat, it says that there's a second edition coming soon. does that have new information? Is it updated, or is it like just a re-release of what's there already?
Mostly it's a re-release of the main body of the book and certainly of the original data. What we have done differently is since it was first published in 2019, a lot has happened. So we've added a section about that. We've changed the forward to reflect that, and also toward the end, just what's happened since. Just to bring it up. So that will be available. We're launching that in February next year with a webinar. So if the most direct way to hear about when that webinar is happening is to go to the vwt.org.au and sign up for their newsletter. They don't inundate you. They're great newsletters. I can't say how often I get one. Maybe once a month or something. But anyway, you will hear when that webinar and when that launch is happening. So we've scheduled that for February next year.
Amazing. I've got another question in the chat about do you have any recommendations of materials for young kids? This person teaches growth and development for years 4 to 6, so roughly 9 to 12-year-olds.
Yes. I'm going to just grab a book. Hold on. Now, this is a book for even younger, it can be suitable for even younger students. It's called A Tiny Seed of Wisdom by Angela Roberts, who's a New Zealander. And it's even suitable for very young children. It's really talking about that seed of wisdom that's within us, even while we're in the womb. Those tiny seeds in our ovaries, and it's a very beautiful unfolding of that, but with lots of great illustrations. So that's almost like step one, but it's you need much more for the year 4 to what did you say? 6, I think. I think, and it depends if you're talking about. I think there's a place for boys and girls and all genders in that age group. There's also a place for girls only. Or those who will menstruate, conversations, because there's things that will come up there, questions that will come up, conversations that will, only happen if they're in that single gender or, the females groups. So I think there's a whole lot of different scenarios. I'm just trying to think of other resources I can put you in touch with. Well, we have a look at the celebrationdayforgirls.com website. There's quite a lot in there, and that will give you ideas. And I think just for that age group, of course, you want some very clear, accurate information about puberty and the physiology of the process, but keeping it fairly simple, and equating that to the life cycles. And as I mentioned earlier, cycles, I think, is a really grounding, integrating way for students of that age to really absorb this material in a positive way.
Amazing. I might add something on from the RSE's perspective as well. In terms of like hard copy materials or activities, what we've done a few times with students that we've worked with is we've brought like a little period kit that has all the different things that someone might use when they're menstruating. So it gives them kind of an opportunity to feel the things, see what they look like, look at all the different options, just so they can kind of find something that they might look at and be like, oh, that seemed like that would be something that I could use. And it kind of, removes a bit of, as you said, Jane, removes a bit of the shame and stigma around it because you're bringing those things into the classroom and showing the different things that they might use. They do the demos of pads and tampons, but we'll get a bigger kit. Yeah, so we've got a few different things that we include. We have like a period cup in there. We've got period undies. We've just gone on to, oh, I'm going to forget the name of them now. I
Moddy
cannot
Body?
remember the name of them. What did you say, Hannah?
Was it Moddy Body?
Yeah, Moddy Body. They have some really good period swimwear, like some period swimwear underwear, which are like really, really cool. You can't even tell that they're like a thicker lining for someone who's menstruating. But yeah, we got a few of those to bring into classrooms as well to show that not all period undies will look like nappies, and you can wear them while you're swimming and you don't have to stress about how you can swim whilst on your period. So that's some other options, Tracy, as well. But feel free, as Jane said, if you want to reach out to Jane for some more informational resources, and if you want to reach out to us as well, I'm more than happy to provide any information that we can.
Also, the GDHR website has some, they're usually targeted a bit older, but they do have some stuff that is can probably be adapted. And there's also a brilliant pop-up book called is it like Vaginas and Periods 101, Rasheen?
I think,
and it has,
I think that is.
it's I do have a copy in the desk behind me, but basically it's a pop-up book and you can actually make the egg go around the fallopian tube and stuff. And you can visualize it with the pop-up book, which is really cool as well and appropriate for, I would say, quite young as well.
Another great resource is that, again, is a wonderful West Australian creator called Kath Hansen. She has a website called Sex Ed Rescue, and she's just brilliant and has amazing resources on there, and including about talking about puberty and periods and so on. So she's got great stuff. Just as you were saying, Hannah, there are so many good books these days. Back when my daughter was, pre-menarcheal and going through puberty, there was really very little, and she and I went to the library and got everything we could, and then had a good look at it all, with varying degrees of laughter and on my part some horror, I have to say. But there's really a lot of good stuff out there now.
Amazing. There was just one more question in the chat. Sue, did you want to put your microphone on? I'm not sure if that was a question about reusable pads or if there was another purpose. I'm not too sure.
Hi, you've just caught me with a mouthful of chips. Thanks.
Oh, sorry.
We caught you.
You did. I'm swallowing frantically here. I'm just wondering if you sort of talk about reusable pads, for instance, and I have some interest and connection with places like Days for Girls, which once upon a time I would have thought possibly was for developing countries more so. And now I'm hearing that schools and girls and women around Perth are using them. So I thought that, I just wondered what your thought was regarding that.
That's interesting. I am also surprised. I hadn't heard that. I know in Australia there's quite a few groups of women who create the pads for Days for Girls and create the kits. Yeah. So, but I wouldn't have thought there'd be, because we have other projects in Australia, various projects for period poverty. So that's interesting. If they're also being distributed here, I'm surprised.
Yes, and I think
that's into it.
Sorry, the environmental, sustainable sort of aspect of them, I think, is something that some people consider.
Absolutely. And I've always included them, so I try when I'm with girls, I really try to show them everything, because particularly the girls that mostly I'm involved with are 10 to 12 years old. So they're going to be strongly influenced by what mum uses or what's possible for their family. And so rather than saying you should do this or you should do that, I try and give them the breadth of these are all the different things. And they may, when they have the capacity to make their own choices, they will then remember what's available. So I actually, way back in the day, ran a cloth pad business for a while. So I'm very keen to add those in and just plant those seeds. So thanks for bringing that up, Sue.
Thank you.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Jane, and thank you for everyone who attended the webinar today. Jane, am I correct in saying that you were happy for me to pass on your email?
Yes.
Yep, brilliant. So we'll get everything sorted in terms of the recording. I will send through Jane's presentation slides and her email as well. And if you wanted to contact her for some more information, you can. And again, if you have any questions for us or you want some support from the RSE project to do any of your PD in schools or anything you like, feel free to reach out to us on the email that I sent through this morning. So thank you very much, and hope you enjoy the rest of your Tuesday.